There's a distance between us. It's getting hard to reach out. Haven't seen you in seasons, but all I hear is your voice. I know my limits, you can break me down, but I'll stay till the finish line. And I've been counting minutes for quite some time now, just to see you again. And I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again. We got millions of reasons to let it all go. Hope we're not too broken. I know I'm not always strong, and I've been counting days to get away, to see you again, see you again. Been fighting ways to get away, to see you again, see you again.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, John J. II, here with episode 91 of the GCP. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on a Wednesday night, the 16th of October, 2024. Wow, we're already through 7 weeks of college football, and it's been a whirlwind. Okay, it's been a whirlwind. It went by like that, as it usually does. So we got to kind of take it as we see it and be able to regurgitate everything that we see moving forward into the final weeks, essentially, as it be moving into the second or the latter half of the season. It's been a hell of a ride, and for some it's been great, for some not so great. Some shaky starts, some shaky games that could have went either way. Obviously, you're going to have that every season. But looking forward, looking at the standings, we're going to take a look at the AP polls. Obviously, take a look at the Big Ten standings, look at the state of Michigan State football, which obviously I'm wearing the Sparty on my chest just because, yeah, I'm an alumni, but at the same time, I'm always going to be pulling for the Sparties no matter what, no matter how bad of a season we have. Listen, okay, it's Jonathan Smith's first season at Michigan State. I think it's already a breath of fresh air. I talked to Sobo, I talked to Cody, I talked to Sam Vitale, I talked to Connor, I talked to all these guys. And a lot of these guys are Michigan fans. Okay, Sobo is not. Sobo's on the good guys' side, as it be. But for looking at it at a broad perspective view, like we always do, there's a lot of growth to be had. There's a lot of things that need to change potentially, but you're not going to have it be perfect the first season. We saw that with Mel Tucker, and you're going to have to shake out some of the shakiness as you move forward into subsequent years. Obviously, a lot to clean up with with everything that's going on and has transpired with Michigan State and their coaching staff, primarily not the best track record as it be. And just looking at it like that, it's like you got a lot to do to pick up the pieces to rebuild a program and to essentially rise up from the ashes and become something that is worth talking about. First of all, let's talk about the Big Ten standings. So the Indiana Hoosiers, they've just absolutely rolled. They've absolutely rolled. They are 6-0 right now. No one would have guessed it. And they're just playing great football. Oregon, pulling off a big win against Ohio State last week. We're going to talk about that, break that game down a little bit more. And also Penn State. You look at the top three in the Big Ten. They're also rolling in the AP polls. Okay, then you got Illinois, Ohio State at 5, Nebraska, which are Cornhuskers, that they're pulling their weight. You got Iowa sitting at 4-2, Michigan at 4-2. A lot of teams at 4-2. Washington sitting at 4-3. They got another game under their belt, and they're struggling a little bit. Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights, alongside my Michigan State Spartans, sitting at 1-2 in conference play. Not ideal. But then you got Northwestern, USC, Maryland, Purdue, and UCLA, which they've just had a terrible season. They're 0-4 in the conference. And you can even go back to early press conferences when the coach of their program was like, okay, yeah, well, we're UCLA, University of, Los Angeles, whatever you want to say. They don't really know what their identity is. And this new Big Ten, it's really finding its own identity because you're looking at somewhat of a super conference, which we've coined that term on this show, essentially. A super conference, getting rid of the region system, competing with conferences like the SEC, the ACC. Obviously, the SEC and Big Ten, I'd say you put them neck and neck as far as notoriety, as far as strength in schedule, strength in team status, whatever you want to say. They're very similar in that regard as far as the strength goes. And they're going to be a big representation of the college football playoff, which is the 12-team. This is the first year of the 12-team format. We're going to explain that a little bit more too. But there's some games to be played. Bye weeks have taken place. How will teams pick up the pieces and reclaim what's theirs going down the stretch in the Big Ten? How does this paint the picture for the Big Ten championship? A lot to be desired here. Not every team plays every team. There's not enough games, not enough weeks in the season to play every team in the Big Ten anymore. So you're not going to see that. You're not, getting rid of the region system really made that complicated. But with adding all the teams from the Pac-12 and over on the West Coast, you had to do that. You had to get rid of the regions. So it makes things interesting, but it makes things more complicated when you're making schedules and you're classifying matchups, you're thinking about the postseason, thinking about the end of the season, conference championship, etc. There's a lot to be looked at. So real quick, let's just take a look at the state of Michigan State football. Sitting at 3-3, we're not in really good shape, I think. I think that I can speak for a lot of Michigan State fans, alumni, and others when I say that there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of kinks to be worked out. So Aiden Chillis, he's been doing what he has to do with the tools that he's had. I want to see him be more mobile. I want to see him get rid of the ball. His offensive line is not giving him the time that he is expecting them to give him. And because of that, the pocket tends to crush on him a lot, compressing on Aiden Chillis. And he doesn't have the time to get rid of the ball. But he has to have that awareness, okay? He's a sophomore. I get it. He's a young guy. He's still growing into that position at quarterback for Michigan State. But I want to see him do more. I've seen him do more. Starting off the season 3-0, winning a big game against Maryland in the Dying Embers. Okay, should have won that game against Boston College too. But that's neither here nor there. That's one of those losses you can live with, okay? And getting smacked by Ohio State and then smacked by Oregon, that's not a really good breath of fresh air going into a bye week. And now you got a great Iowa team you're facing at homecoming. So we'll see how that takes place. But just looking at the odds here, it's not looking good for the Sparties. Obviously, if you want to take them at plus money, then more power to you, okay? 5.5 points is the spread. 7:30 night game under the lights. You can assume there's going to be some sauce flowing. Okay, they got alcohol served in the stadium now. There's going to be some juices flowing in that stadium for homecoming. Hopefully they pull it out and at least play a good game. Just play a good game. Give the people a show. Give the people a show. Give the people what they came to see. Okay. He's working with K'Ron Lynch-Adams at running back, Nick Marsh, the freshman, at wide receiver. And listen, he's got to count on these younger guys. Obviously, Lynch-Adams sitting at a senior position. He wants to see the most out of his team. He wants to see that team develop. Jonathan Smith wants to see that team develop. He's playing a lot of these Pac-12 teams that he has played before when he was coaching at Oregon State. Okay, so these types of things are not foreign to him. He's growing in the position. He's growing into the team, but I think he's expecting more too. They should be sitting at 4-2. Okay, I'm just going to say it right now. So sitting at 4-2, they should be sitting at 4-2. Win one of the last 3 games, and you're sitting at 4-2. Okay, that's why you got odds like this. That's why you got MSU plus 200. The state of the program is in rebuilding mode, and I feel like that is, in a lot of ways, it's kind of sounds like a broken record to Michigan State fans. When is our program going to be back? When are we going to be back to the glory days, the D'Antonio era? When are we going to see some of that reclaimed as part of our story, part of our legacy? When will that happen? I don't know. Is that the near future, or are we still going to be rebuilding for the next couple of years? Because really, to maintain that aura that you have as Michigan State football, you don't have 2-3 years to do that. You're going to drop. You're going to drop off the deep end, and people are going to forget about you. People are going to be thinking about you as a has-been team, and you don't want to do that. So you got to take your rebuilding years. As far as I'm concerned, every single year Mel Tucker was there, it was a rebuilding year. Okay, other than the Kenneth Walker year, which that kind of went to hell in a handbasket towards the end of the season after the Michigan game, and things happened maybe not in their favor. But that's when we kind of thought we were turning the page of rebuilding into somewhat of veteran status, where we are going to be deserving of certain wins. Certain games should be in the bag, and we should be expecting to win against some top-ranked opponents. Obviously, that hasn't happened. You fall back, you have scandal, you have controversy, and then you're back in a rebuilding phase. So Michigan State football has struggled. It has squandered opportunities in the past, but it's also fallen on hard times. And I'm not making excuses for the program, I'm not making excuses for my alma mater. Okay, but it's just sad to see it happen when you expected so much from the D'Antonio era to transition then into the Mel Tucker era and beyond. You expect more. Okay, you expect more. I speak for everybody when I say we expect more out of the Michigan State Spartans football program. We do. We have to. And they've earned that right. But in years past, with the rebuilding and everything else, you're falling out of that status. So that has to be looked at and that has to be thought about. But there's you got a tough game. You got to look at the game ahead. Okay, Cade McNamara, the Michigan Wolverine, he's holding the rope over there at Iowa. They're doing a hell of a job sitting at 4-2. They're the 4-2 team. Okay, that's why we're seeing the spreads like we're seeing here at a home game at night in Spartan Stadium. That's why we're seeing MSU plus 200, plus money at home on homecoming because of those things. Okay, and you see the discrepancies. Vegas sees the discrepancies. Everybody sees the discrepancies. There's a lot of ground to make up that has been lost. Okay, Aiden Chillis is throwing too many interceptions. He's making too many mistakes. He's letting the pocket crumble on him and compress, and it's causing strain for the offense. So you're asking too much of the defense. You're not getting enough out of the offense, so there's struggle. There's probably a lot of heated exchanges in film sessions because of the things I mentioned. So how does that play out? We'll have to wait and see. Moving on, let's talk about the 12-team format. So looking forward at the 12-team format, it'll include the 5 highest-ranked conference champions that will be basically making up the first round of buys, essentially. So you got those 5 teams. They have automatic bids. The 7 highest-ranked teams remaining will round out the 12-team format. Obviously, you got to have buys for it to work as a 12-team. They're adding games to the season. It's good for ratings. It's good for the league. It's good for everything. More football, more better. Everything is good. Everyone's happy. everyone is singing Kumbaya, essentially, including me. I am too. It's more football. It's more to look forward to in the postseason. Do you lose bowl games? That has been asked. Do you lose the amount of bowl games that you have? I don't think you do. I think you have some more sub BCS, if you want to still use that ancient term. Sub BCS bowls will now be absorbed by the 12-team format. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. But since you got teams advancing, it's just going to change the landscape a little bit. When you're talking about who's playing who, it's not really set in stone. If these bowl games are getting absorbed into the 12-team format, you're not going to really have those matchups early on, whereas previously you would. So it's a little bit of adjusting, it's a little bit of moving with the times and seeing how things are going to go. But so this is how the 12-team format will play out given the first round of byes has taken place. Number 5 will play number 12, 6 will play 11, 7 will play 10, 8 will play 9. So the top 4 teams will earn a first round bye. They will not play, even though that number 5 team that might have won their conference, they will not get a bye. So that has to be looked at, has to be anticipated. They did a cool thing on NCAA.com where they talked about what the playoff picture would look like in a 12-team format if we rewinded the tape a little bit to last season. Okay, you're looking at just basically the top 12 teams: Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Missouri, Penn State, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. Okay, so that's how it would look. And then using those same matchups that I just mentioned, that's how it would have played out. And the jury is still out on how that will be played out with bowl games also giving, you got the Tostito Fiesta Bowl, you got all these bowls, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, you got everything. How does that work with the 12-team format? The jury's out on it. So I'm excited for the 12-team format. I think this is a long time coming, ever since the 4-team format was brought into place. I think that this was a long time coming, and we needed to see something like this. I think we should have had this all along. This shouldn't be a new thing. Okay, the 12-team format, yes, it's great. Yes, it's awesome. I think it's a long time coming. Will this be the new standard? Will this stick? Essentially, obviously, the 4-team format stuck for a long time, and it was basically like that's how it was, the 4-team format for the better half of a decade. And it wound up changing the 12-team format. Obviously, members of the executive board at the NCAA and the college football playoff, they have their own committees. They voted to increase the amount of teams in the playoff conversation, which I think is good. I think it's great because you have those teams that are kind of sitting on the fringe where it's like, oh, maybe they didn't get in. Maybe they're, sitting at a Florida State position, where they lose Jordan Travis and now they're kicked out. They feel shortchanged, but then the bowl game happens and then they're like, oh, well, they never deserved to be in there anyway. So it kind of made itself work. But now you're having some of those fringe teams where you're talking about the 13th ranked team, whereas AP polls could be thrown out the window when you got to that range because it could be 1 through 15, depending on who wins the conference. You could have a non-ranked team, essentially, that could be past the 15 mark in the AP polls and still win their conference. So how does that play out? You got to wait to the end of the season to wait on that and see how that works. But I love a 12-team format. I think it's going to be great. First year for everything. And you got first times for everything. This is the first year of the 12-team format. Coming along the same year where you have all these teams joining the SEC. You got Texas joining the SEC. You got Washington, UCLA, Oregon, USC, all these teams joining the Big Ten. Really adds a lot to the conversation. They threw a lot of ingredients into the blender, and we're going to see what we get come the postseason. So just a waiting game. We got to talk about the Ohio State loss to Oregon that happened last week in Eugene, and it's not really what you want to see if you're an Ohio State Buckeye. Obviously, I'm licking my chops at this. I don't give a shit. Ryan Day, you got what you had coming to you. This is a classic miscommunication from all the coaches, from coaches on the floor to coaches upstairs to the quarterback, everybody. everybody. And it's a sign of the times. We know this stuff happens. There's been some strategic plays made, even on the defensive side of the ball, where they had 12 men on the field. I think that was a strategic move, and you can see why, based on how that game played out. And defensive coaches, they said this on the Dan Patrick Show. Everybody in the defensive coordinator position, defensive coaches all over the place, they have to know every play in the book. They have to use the tools that they have to their advantage. And that might even mean having 12 players on the field. And that's why it wound up happening in this game. So Will Howard took questions following this game. Hard to take questions after that game. And he explained the loss. They left a lot on the field. That's what he said. They left a lot on the field, and there was a lot to be desired going into the locker room. Okay, there's things that we could have done differently. From an Ohio State Buckeyes perspective, there's a lot that we could have done differently. Okay, we could have ran this play at this time. We could have done this. We could have done that. Okay, so looking at the final moments, so let's just talk about once they get the ball back. So first down, they go down and they get a great catch. They convert. Cornell Tate makes another good catch. Uboka converts on the third down. And then they're kind of in cluster mode because they don't really know what to do. It's a long kick. They incur a penalty. They get a 3rd and 20. And basically there's pandemonium going on in Will Howard's brain because he sees the pocket open up. He starts running the ball. He slides in an attempt to down the ball or get down or maybe get in position on the right hash to get a field goal kick opportunity. Time expires, and that's the end of the game. So Ryan Day's going crazy because, the previous play they had 12 men on the field, and you got all these things happening. The game is over. Okay, it's a classic miscommunication, bad field position IQ, knowing what you have to do in any given moment. They squandered it. Okay, now that penalty, which was illegal use of hands or something like that, which sent Ohio State back essentially out of field goal range, they have to go for it. But they can get in position where they can put the ball at a certain point and have an opportunity for a kick. Do they take the kick early? That's something they could look at in hindsight and in film sessions. You can look at it and slice it up however you want. Once the clock hit zeros, it was a 32-31 victory for Oregon. And that basically changes the landscape a lot in the Big Ten standings. You got Nebraska, Ohio State, and Illinois sitting at 5-1 now, where you got Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana sitting atop of the Big Ten undefeated at 6-0. So it's really interesting to see how that can change things. And you're looking at such tight margins. To lose a game by a point like that, that's got to hurt. So will that be a big deal going down the stretch into the future of the season, into the latter half of the season? We'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of games left, but at the same time, your opportunities are dwindling, especially if you're fighting for position in your conference or in the AP polls. Okay, you're looking at a lot of different things, a lot of different question marks are sitting in front of you. So we can look at the AP polls real quick. Just take a quick gander at the AP polls because, the AP polls, they've somehow cemented themselves as they are the paramount. They are the pillar. They are the cornerstone of rankings for college football. And we've seen that that's been the case for years. That's why we say the AP polls, okay, because they have the AP polls for football, AP polls for college basketball. So it's an important thing to look at. Whether you believe it, whether you buy into it or not, it's definitely something the College Football Playoff Committee looks at when they're making matchups. And how will that be utilized with conference champions being brought in and also those teams that are on the fringe? How will they make it into the College Football Playoff? So let's just go through the top 10 here. Number 1, Quinn Ewers and the Texas Longhorns sitting at number 1. Oregon, Big Ten's own at number 2. Penn State, Big Ten's own, sitting at number 3. Ohio State still managed to be number 4. I don't know how that works. 5, you got Georgia. 6, Miami. 7, Alabama. 8, LSU. 9, Iowa State. And 10, Clemson. Cade Klubnik is making a comeback, and they are really rising up from the ashes. Okay, Dabo Sweeney, he is in good spirits. And even though some records have been crushed and ended as far as wins, etc., for Clemson, wins at home, there's a lot looking forward and upward for the Clemson Tigers. I'm hopeful for Cade Klubnik. He's growing into that position at quarterback for Clemson, and he's rising in the Heisman rankings too. So that has to be looked at. That has to be talked about. But looking at the Heisman rankings just as they stand, obviously Ashton Jeanty of Boise State rushing for 1,248 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9.9 yards average per rush, 126 carries. This guy is unbelievable. They're playing on the blue field. I don't know if that's an advantage or not. But this guy, Jeanty, he is really holding the rope for Boise State. And they're doing what they have to do to win games. And they're really doing everything right, essentially. Sitting at 15, the AP polls. That's right there on the fringe. Right there on the fringe. If you're making it to the college football playoff, got to win out to fight for position. But he's rising to the top. Where only weeks ago he was sitting at number 4 in the Heisman rankings. You also got Travis Hunter, the cornerback / wide receiver for the Colorado Buffs. Wow, this guy, he's a dual threat. Now, is this a Coach Prime special or what's going on here? Because he's playing both sides of the ball. You're risking injury on both sides of the ball. One when you're getting tackled and the other when you're making tackles. High contact, high velocity position, both of them. You're basically playing both positions mirrored. So it's really a good fit. Fits like a glove. You don't see it happen too often, but Travis Hunter is up there in the Heisman conversation as well. You also got Cam Ward of the Miami Hurricanes passing for 2,219 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 92 QBR. Those are impressive stats. He sits at number 2. Jalen Milroe, Alabama, obviously Alabama and the Crimson Tide, the Tide, they're going to do what they have to do to get the job done week after week. And taking a tough loss to Vanderbilt, obviously that's going to be a scuff on your record, on your resume, looking back at the 2024-25 season. But it seems like they've managed to make the best of it. And, they're going to do what they have to do to get the job done no matter what. They're going to rise to the top of the SEC. Obviously going to have to contend with Texas and some other teams that are a threat, but it's a super conference. When you're a part of a super conference, let me paint a picture for you. When you're part of a super conference, especially with no regions involved, the SEC, not sure if you knew this, but the SEC also got rid of their regions. You're fighting for position every single week, conference games or non-conference games. Obviously, conference games matter more. They hold more weight, but you're fighting for position every single week. So that's why the latter half of the season, those teams that are on the fringe, that are sitting at 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 in their conference, they're going to be fighting for position every game going forward throughout the rest of the season. So Alabama's in that position, but I don't think they got to worry too much. Got to get some big wins going forward to do that. Got a big game against the Vols this weekend, that's going to be a big test for them. We'll have to see how they fare. But, you got some other guys sprinkled in there. Obviously, Cade Klubnik, as previously mentioned, he is in the conversation for Heisman. Does he rise to the top? Does he pull Clemson up from the ashes so much where he gets that 1-2 spot? I'm not sure if we get there before December 14th. But listen, anything is possible. Anything can happen. But these rankings and these votes, everything kind of gets set in stone, solidified once you get to mid-November. Really, the sky could fall in mid-November, even late November, and those rankings are pretty much set in stone by that point because you're looking more at personal stats than you are team stats. But a lot of movement potential for Cade Klubnik and a lot of these other guys in the Heisman race. So it's exciting. I want to talk about this because it was brought up. We talked about it on the GSN 100, and Sam Vitale helped break it down for us a little bit. We're going to talk about it a little bit more, and this really is pertinent to me and what I do because I deal with contracts a lot with what I do in my work. And it has to do with that same exact thing, that nothing is set in stone, and get everything in writing. Don't trust anything that is verbal, no verbal agreements, etc. Get something signed where you have it on paper to reference later on, because you don't know who was in the room, if it wasn't recorded, whatever. Verbal agreements are not worth the air that they're breathed in. So this regards Matt Sluka and his agent. He covered himself in glory, essentially, when he didn't do this. And there was a lot of missed opportunities that should have called for him to get this NIL deal. But it comes down to the fact that verbal contracts are not contracts. Contracts are contracts. Okay, I'm quoting extrasportsmb.com. They have a great excerpt on this. It's even sprinkled in there with some op-ed language, which I think is helpful for everybody, just for context. And it looks like there was verbal agreements made with UNLV to have a certain contract that was then relayed to Matt Sluka. And nothing was set in stone. Nothing was really promised, even though for Matt Sluka being on the opposite side of it. Okay, now his agent, Cromartie, was the middleman. He was the guy that was in charge of conducting things with the college. Okay, Marcus Cromartie. His Sluka's agent, he wasn't actually certified in Nevada to even be an agent. This isn't uncommon. The laws for being an agent for even out-of-state recruits isn't really demanded, isn't really by law, has to be that way, but you have to get all your ducks in a row. Okay, so Blueprint Sports, the company that operates UNLV's main NIL collective, was co-founded by a fella named Francisco Aguilar, who now happens to be Nevada's Secretary of State. Coincidence. You think looking into the paperwork might just be a teensy bit more in the DNA of that kind of company. That didn't seem to be the case. It also appears that Cromartie was unaware of legal changes that would permit athletes to sign NIL paperwork before they actually enroll in college. The regulatory world of NIL changes every week, and I can understand why a much smaller or less experienced agency might decide to err on the side of overcompliance. But Cromartie works for Equity Sports, which isn't a small agency. They work with athletes like Kareem Hunt, Jerry Jeudy, James Harden, and some dude named Patrick Mahomes, per the article, along with several college athletes who have legitimate NFL prospects. Okay, so he's in the article, the op-ed says, no disrespect to Matt Sluka, but he's not an NFL prospect or the kind of guy that would get NFL type deals or even $100,000 plus deals. Okay, so basically the moral of the story is this was never written on paper. Contracts were never signed with Matt Sluka via UNLV and then translated and given to the messenger, which was Cromartie. That never took place. It was a verbal agreement. Hey, I think they're going to give you $100,000. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. And then once push came to shove, UNLV's like, you know what? I don't think we can do that right now. Okay, and it was a $100,000 contract, and there was possibly some negotiations that happened taking place following the controversy. But by then, the relationship had been somewhat tainted, and UNLV chose to walk away from the deal entirely. So this just sheds more light on the dark world of NIL. I think it's really hurting college sports. I think it's hurting schools getting good prospects, getting good recruits. It's causing coaches to leave, which I think is a big reason why Nick Saban retired. Okay. It's hurting college sports because it's bringing money too much to the center of college sports and why these athletes are playing the sport that they were born to play. Okay. We're seeing it take precedent too much of the time. They're looking at the number. They're looking at the dollar sign. And they're getting too caught up in the dollar amount before they've even made it to the league. They haven't proved themselves in college yet. Why do they deserve anything? Okay, now I get if you're stepping in and doing a commercial for Gatorade, then maybe you deserve a little bit of coin, deserve a little bit of notoriety. I think there can be a common ground here. But per this article and everything I've read, these regulations, these rules, they change week by week. It's too new. It's too new of a concept to work out great. You're going to see these issues, and they've happened in other instances as well. But you're going to see it happen more and more as NIL becomes more of a topic, a talking point, whatever you want to call it. It's a reality. It's a reality with college sports now. And obviously, it's only admitted and admissible to the profit earning sports, football, basketball. Okay, you got some other sports in there that are way down on the list compared to those two. But when you're looking at it like that, you got to be playing an income, income sport, essentially, like those that are bringing in the major TV deals, that are bringing in the major numbers on a week by week basis to your stadiums, to your facilities, to even have an NIL, unless you're getting completely third party deals. But at that point, you're not sharing the piece of the pie that the university is getting, because that's what these deals are. They're signing bonuses, essentially. They're signing bonuses. And to even be talking about signing bonuses at the college level is insane. It's really crazy stuff. So we're going to see a lot more of this take place. I hope it doesn't end badly, but it's on the rocks. And that begs the question, does college sports, does the NCAA get rid of NIL altogether? I don't think they do. I think they find a common ground, but they're going to have to work out these kinks. And they got to work them out fast, because people are losing faith in college sports, me included. I think that teams, conferences, universities, they're all getting shortchanged by the infectious virus of NIL. And I don't think it's all bad. You got a lot of athletes that are giving back to their hometown communities. They're giving back to people in need. And I think that's all great. I think that's the silver lining with NIL. But being able to mitigate the amount of money, monetary value, anything to an athlete, I think that has to be done. There has to be some kind of limit, because you're getting teams, you're getting big SEC universities that maybe a smaller school had to recruit, but then Clemson or Alabama or Texas comes along and says, hey, well, we'll give you this much to play for us. Then that small school's like, what the hell did I do all my recruiting for? What am I paying my recruiters to do? We're just getting undercut and overcut by these bigger schools. We're getting outbid, essentially. So there's got to be a fix. There's got to be something that takes place to mitigate this issue. But I don't see one in the near future. Looking forward at week 8, the marquee games, Oregon and Purdue in a Big Ten matchup, Oklahoma State, BYU, Miami, Louisville, Virginia, Clemson, Nebraska, Indiana, Auburn, Missouri, East Carolina, and Army, Alabama and Tennessee, which I believe is the game of the week. Alabama -3. The over-under is 56.5. That could change. But Alabama -3 going into a very hostile environment at Tennessee. We could see that go either way. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech they're surging. They're doing a hell of a job, and they're holding their own. And you got Michigan, Illinois, Charlotte and Navy, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, LSU and Arkansas, Georgia and Texas. That's another big game, night game. And that's going to be a test for both teams playing at Texas in Arlington. It's going to be a dogfight. UCF taking on Iowa State, Kansas State, and West Virginia, SMU, and Stanford to wrap the night up. So got an exciting week 8 coming towards you, and it's coming at you fast. This season ending is coming at you fast. Listen, we're getting close to the eclipse. We got MLB baseball going on. Hockey just started back up. College basketball is on the horizon. It's only a couple weeks away. So that's got to be in the main thought process when you're thinking about college sports, thinking about the eclipse itself. And the fall eclipse is on the horizon. So look forward to it all. It's all great stuff. And yeah, I can't wait to get Connor's take on all these stories, Sam's take on all this stuff, and then Cody. We're going to have him back in the fold. Everybody back on the GCP here in the coming weeks. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be electric. So that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out all of our links at the bottom of this podcast in the description, and we'll see you here next time. For now, I'm John J. II with the Gin College Podcast. Have a great night.